All right, so I was watching this video yesterday, or not yesterday, it's been a few days. I guess I'm losing track of time. I need to like actually get active and start using my brain. It's just chilling. Definitely need to get a job already, it feels like, because it's been a while. I think my plans for coming back home are upended with some personal stuff, some medical issues that got canceled. Then, yeah, I'm just dealing with some personal issues in that regard. So it's kind of making it difficult for me to look for work right now and do other things. But I don't know. I just been kind of relaxed. My house is nice and cool. It's been really hot here in Albuquerque, like over. It's been hovering like around 100 degrees for a good portion of the days. So it's like the only time you could really go out where it feels like kind of comfortable is like around, 6 or 7 in the morning if you want to go for like a walk or something. But yeah, it's been little bit a little bit toasty here in Albuquerque. But I think the I saw this and it was talking about the older generation, also known as the boomers, the people born after World War II, and I was just kind of interested in this. I think in order to change things, we have like to have these intergenerational conversations with our elders. You know what I mean? Especially now that they're aging, and dang, I like a little phlegmy in my throat. Now that they're aging, it's gonna become a little bit more difficult for them to get around, and it's yeah, just aging in an automobile centric infrastructure is hard. It's more difficult than living in a place that's like walkable. Oh, excuse me, I'm a bit thirsty. Um, so yeah, we definitely need to upgrade some stuff around here to make things more accessible for people who are older. And yeah, and I hear a lot of stuff about equating accessibility with automobile stuff. People are it's like, oh, if we close stuff off to cars, that makes it less accessible. I'm like, no, it actually makes it more accessible to people with who could use wheelchairs to get around like blocked off areas like Santa Fe Plaza, for example. I'm like, if somebody has to use a wheelchair, they could actually push themselves around the plaza if there's no cars around them. You know what I mean? It's like I've seen that all over Europe, where people with motorized scooters are able just to go around all the car-free plazas, like all over the place. They have way more options. And a lot of public transit allows them to put their motorized vehicles or walkers and all their stuff onto the buses and trains and stuff too. So I don't know. We definitely need to open up our minds to different ideas and just like kind of learning where our elders are coming from. So this video is kind of good. I think we could watch it together, kind of ponder some ideas.
Yes, you. Do you suck at networking, socializing, or generally finding jobs? One of the best ways to do that is learn how to engage your audience. And so let me give you a tip on how to do that, because that's how someone will remember your conversation. Say you were talking to a boomer that's roughly in their 70s. The birth years for the baby boomers are from 1945 to 1965, so that means, depending on where you are in that range, they'd be in their 20s somewhere in the late 60s, 70s, or early 80s. Now, why does this matter? Well, generally, the most formative time in someone's life is when they're learning how to be a person that exists in the adult world. During this time, people find themselves in their personality, they form political opinions, and most importantly, they're just trying to figure out and understand how the world works. So knowing this, you have to relate something in that time frame of when the person that you're talking to was in their 20s to the conversation that you're having. Instantly, the dusty gears on their mind that haven't moved in years grind to life, and suddenly you have a person that will recognize you for being knowledgeable about things that they cared about when they were young. I know for some of you this is pretty basic in the I'm just relating to the other person type deal, but for many people they've never thought about these things. Our environments, political climates, and pop media also shape who we are and what we believe. So many things can be explained with various generations by studying what, when, and where a generation grew up to see, that then shapes.
Honestly, it's already happening to to me a lot of times, just like in relation to like historical events, as like common points that we all understood, like what 9/11 means to Gen Z is a lot different to older generations. So it's like they didn't live through it. A lot of them, there's people that are now, that that are older than 21, and they didn't witness that. That wasn't like a personal event in their life, so it doesn't have the same meaning to them as it does to people who like witness that stuff live when it happens. So it's just things like that, you know. It's like our elders like lived through a lot of stuff, you know, during like, you know, there's like Vietnam War and just all the stuff that happened in like the 60s, all the changes that occurred since then, you know. So yeah, it's definitely, they are living in a way different world, and like even older millennials too. It just feels like a lot has changed since we were young as far as like technology, all that stuff.
Broad views of an age group of people. Urbanism channels on YouTube, and generally most online urbanists, love to chastise older generations for incredibly general and negative perceptions about how the world works. And the criticism often is about how boomers and older Gen X talk about North American infrastructure, especially cities, and how generally they hate and fear them. Granted, many of these generational accusations are correct, but most urbanist attacks lack nuance and often leave out historical precedents about why these groups of people were led to adopt these beliefs, and whether these thoughts came from a place of malice. We often see images comparing old and new versions of North American cities, and how the greatest generation, silent generation, and boomers gutted them completely. But why? Was it because they wanted the automobile to be king and because of terrible racism? Well, those aspects were definitely part of the story, and there are plenty of videos out there that cover those topics well. But there's more to the narrative than just that. Let's look at the correlations of how each generation grew up, why they formed certain views, and how those thoughts have evolved over time. So can we answer the question of why did well-meaning North Americans turn against cities in the mid-20th century, and why do boomers and older Gen X hate cities? Also, looking back at history, we often overlook good things of the past, and
Yeah, I mean, I think about that there's like this really negative bias against cities. Even like growing up in the 90s, early 2000s, people were like, oh, if you go to cities you're gonna get killed, New York's horrible, like all these big places are scary. And just the meet, even now, like there's still like a ton of stuff that's against cities and stuff like that currently, you know. So yeah, that's definitely, we're still dealing with that issue. It's a sponsor, avoid that. So it's not just like a boomer thing, it's definitely like something that we deal with now, you know. What the heck's going on
here? When I was searching for footage 2 years ago for my Patco video, I came across some 8mm footage that someone had taken from the front row seat of the train riding over the Ben Franklin Bridge into Philly in 1970. In contrast with the modern experience of riding Patco, it was stark and jarring. The footage looks like you're descending into a dark and dreary place that's falling into shambles. Not at all the Philadelphia that I know, let alone grew up with. And it made me quickly want to look up more pictures of that era, and specifically places that I know and experience daily. Philadelphia's waterfront looked like some bombed-out hell zone of industry trash and pollution. Center City was dull, gray, grimy, and covered with layers of smoke deposits. And one of my favorite places, 30th Street Station, a station that looks like a Greek temple mixed with Art Deco, a place that radiates energy of connection and travel, looked sad and dull. The late 60s, 70s, and 80s were rough on American cities, and more broadly all cities of the world. And this is the world that the boomers and older Gen X grew up in. Their personalities and their worldviews were shaped by these settings and places that are so alien to younger people in those same locations today. There are three main historic vibes that separate these generations' hatred for cities from the millennials and Gen Z, who are open to making cities their home. But all of those precedents all roughly follow the same vein of historic changes. What boomers and Gen X lived was an entirely different world from the one that millennials and Gen Z were raised in. And largely, these fundamental youth lessons turned into building blocks that determined how each generation viewed the world. For better or for worse, boomers and Gen X were self selected to have ideologies built upon these physical and material differences that they were handed. Also, as a caveat, we are very much generalizing in this video. Not every boomer, Gen X, millennial, or zoomer perfectly fits these descriptions, but you can easily see the trends that are more popular with certain groups versus others. Obviously, there will be older boomers that will tirelessly defend the urban area that they are from, but they are also in the minority. Anyway, let's introduce the first precedent.
Yeah, I mean, I think about like some of the stuff, before the EPA and before like catalytic converters, and they used to have like leaded gasoline and a lot more toxins in the fuel. So you'd see like old videos of like places like Los Angeles in like the 60s and 70s, and it was just choked. Like pretty much all the cities were like that. It was just choked in pollution, and a lot of American cities don't really. It's still an issue, but it's a fraction of what it used to be back in those days. And yeah, I think the pollution controls have made a difference too. But also there's been a lot of deindustrialization as well. So a lot of those places that they showed, like Philadelphia, and like along the East Coast, there's a lot more factories and stuff like that too that were spewing out smoke.
What many modern and young urbanists need to understand is that for the majority of human history, cities have largely kinda been shit. They've been places of disease, filth, smell, and industrial pollution. Generally, throughout history, people lived in cities for two main reasons: for the quick exchange of goods and knowledge, and because it was the only reasonable way to be close to other people within a day's commute. Since antiquity, this has remained true. From Europe to Asia, from Africa to the Americas, cities generally all looked and functioned pretty much the same. Then imagine, one day, one of the most disruptive technologies in human history was created: the steam engine. In our modern day, we take transportation technologies for granted, but imagine, for the majority of human history, it was impossible to travel over land further than someone could walk or ride a horse in a day. And now suddenly, this scary new mechanical technology is created that could not only transport goods, but also people. Now, it was not only possible, but reasonable to live decent distances from places that you needed to visit, work at, or conduct commerce at. Trains immediately broke the 10,000-year model of how humans built cities, but they were only just the beginning. It wasn't really until the late 1800s when the electric streetcar would allow people to routinely be able.
Oh man, I love streetcars. I wish we would have kept them here in Albuquerque, honestly, or we just bring them back. Honestly, that would be like something I would really love to see. But it would be scary because our drivers are pretty terrible. So I don't know. The street people would probably run into the streetcars. They'd have to put like little cages around them or something. I don't know.
To live further away from cities' cores and commute daily from their homes. Streetcars, trolleys, and trams allowed for the creation of streetcar suburbs, which were some of the first commuter suburbs and transit neighborhoods, allowing for the first time people to live relatively far from their workplaces. Before this, the only people that could live outside of the city by choice were the rich and powerful. This also allowed the wealthy to own properties with manicured lawns with artificial gardens, and eventually created what we know as the front lawn with grass. But even then, the majority of the time, the wealthy still owned properties within the urban core, prioritizing connectivity over everything else. It was a privilege to be able to walk less distances to everything and to be closer to important people. But simultaneously, the rich also began to choose to live further away from urban centers. Many would own a second property outside of the city's core to go escape to during the summer months. And the main reason for leaving was industrial pollution. Even before the Industrial Revolution was a thing.
Yeah, they're pretty gnarly. I remember doing like the walking tours in Europe, and they would always have like the tannery district, or like the butchery district, or the fishmonger district, and it was like that's where the cheapest real estate was because it smelled so bad. And also cities too are just naturally hotter because there's less like tree cover, and there's more like pavements and stuff to kind of like hold in the heat from the sun. So you probably, like, if you're wealthy, you'd want to escape that. Even now I'm like, I wish I had like a country home in the cool mountains right now.
Cities reeked. Tanneries smelled, streets were infested with disease, and generally just sucked. This didn't really start to improve until sewers and indoor plumbing became common, but even then, air pollution was still a huge issue. So fast forward to when World War II was over, and Americans finally had the money, industrial might, and the government structures to allow the average person to buy and build a house in the suburbs. Just like the train, the automobile absolutely shattered the model of how cities could be built. Removed from the train, no longer did you have to create walkable downtowns and dense districts around train stations. Now planners had more freedom to design communities and neighborhoods, which often led to lazy design and endless amounts of suburban track housing without even a thought about how people would get around other than driving.
Yep, lazy design. I think when you have like what seems like unlimited resources, such as like open land or unlimited fuel, the assumption that like gasoline's always going to be cheap and available, and yeah, just endless building material, endless booming economy that could support this sort of infrastructure, it just makes it lazy for you to just continuously sprawl out, and not really have a well thought out design, because you're like, well, people could just drive wherever, who cares.
Like the train, cars were seen as the natural progression of how people should live. In a time of great technological progress, where those who grew up in dense, dirty, smelly cities, suddenly the average person had access to affordable suburban property. So one would have to wonder why you would stay in a city. Why deal with the pollution? Why deal with the noise? The automobile suburbs just seemed like a continuation of the natural progress of how standards and living conditions were improving since the 1800s and the invention of the train. From canals to trains to streetcars, subways, and then automobiles, transportation fed into the desire to escape the pollution, to escape the filth, and for the average person, a desire to appear wealthy. The average suburban house became a simulacra of the 1800s wealthy rural properties, an ideology of escapism from the real world. Escapism. We'll actually come back to that later. Anyway, pollution continued to be the reason why people would move further away from city cores, which also ironically made the pollution worse from automobile traffic. Watch any movie from the 70s or 80s that shows a sunset in Los Angeles, and you can get a taste of how bad the smog.
Yeah, that's my dad likes to watch a lot of the old shows on TV, so it's like that's what I like commented on earlier. Like, I think he was watching like Chips or something, like when the California Highway Patrol guys, and yeah, it's pretty smoggy out there at that time. There's like another one he was watching that's like filmed there during that time. It was like The Fall Guy or something like that. I don't know. It was about I don't know. I think it's they're the guy like the stunt doubles. It's about like a stunt double. It's kind of like a corny show.
Used to be in Southern California. Conservatives often make fun of California for being so tough on emissions, but these laws didn't come from nowhere. They were born out of the necessity to keep the skies in LA clear. While boomers and Gen X weren't the ones that planned this autocentric sprawl, they did grow up in it, especially when it was still in a period of optimism, still riding on that post-World War II high of suburban life, in those new houses built on new land further from the city. But this wouldn't last forever.
Yeah, I think like Southern California is kind of out of space now. It seems like
these concepts, both pollution and technological pressures, compounded with mainstream beliefs at the time. After the end of World War II, the US government wanted to slowly switch the economic machine from wartime production to something more useful for a peacetime economy. One of the solutions to this was to switch from building tanks and airplanes to building domestic infrastructure, and most importantly, building new housing for soldiers returning home from overseas. Thus, the GI Bill was created, giving soldiers that qualified certain benefits like free loans for higher education and, more importantly, low interest, zero down payment loans for housing. But whether it was malicious or accidental, the loans prioritized new construction over buying older properties. And this led to more of the loans going toward newly constructed homes and not older structures. The timing was perfect. The US populace happened to be in the mentality that the suburbs were the future, so the majority of post-war construction and investments went into building up sprawling car-dependent suburbs. This again was secondly compounded by racial tensions at the time, where even if the suburbs were getting built out for everyone, banks, lenders, and often sometimes just neighbors wouldn't allow black and people of color to buy homes in the new suburbs, essentially causing segregated white suburban neighborhoods while everyone else had to stay in urban areas. This is how we get the term redlining, where banks would highlight black neighborhoods in red on maps to discriminate against giving anyone who lived there loans for new housing. Now, you can possibly get a clear picture of the monolithic shift that was happening with society at the time. The boomers were just growing up in this atmosphere of change, and they were along for the ride whether they liked it or not. If you want to add extra coal to the fire, the US railroad system and its passenger services were actively losing out to cars because the new highways were all subsidized by the government, while the railroads were left without investments.
Yeah, it's funny, and the situation is still the same. You know, they talk about the rail run here in New Mexico, how it gets like government subsidies to operate. I'm like, the roads don't pay for themselves. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think? Just because you like to drive on the roads or whatever road you happen to like, you know, I don't know. It's just crazy. And I'm like, there's highways here in New Mexico that I'll never drive on that service like way less people than the rail runner, and they probably cost way more than the rail runner. They service like a few ranchers out in the woods, and they get probably the same amount of money as the rail runners. Actually, like, helps out a lot with like just local transport, you know, for tourism, a bunch of different purposes. So I don't know, it just like, it's funny how people pick and choose what they like. What they like is perfect, it's fine, and what they don't like is socialist waste, basically.
If you ever wonder why boomers seem less than enthusiastic compared to some other younger generations about rail travel, this is partially the reason. The precedent was set, and they would see both cities and transit as history rather than a legitimate optional lifestyle. To them, the entire concept of cities and trains were old school and unnecessary. Have you ever seen this chart before? This chart is older now, it's from 2015, but it shows the amount of lead that people of specific ages had in their bloodstream as a child. Well, you might...
That's just insane, like the amount of lead that was like pumped into people during that time period. It just like kind of explains a lot. You meet like an angry older person, you're like, oh, you probably got a lot of lead exposure.
Think that this is because of kids eating lead paint back in the day or something, but no, this is entirely because of automobiles. Cars use gasoline or petrol, whatever you call it, but one key part of internal combustion engines is that they need to specifically get the timing right of when the gasoline is exploding in the cylinders. Exploding the gas too soon and you can cause damage to the engine, explode it too late or not at all, and you can have incomplete combustion and the engine might not even run. This is why we have different levels of gasoline at the pump. They have different octane ratings for this reason. But back in the early 1900s, when engines were simpler and gas was harder to produce at the right octane ratings, refineries would often add extra elements to the gasoline to make petrol more reliable. One of those elements was lead. And due to the change of people moving to the suburbs and the mass adoption of the automobile after World War II, the lead in the air skyrocketed after the construction of the interstate system. This increased lead pollution in the air. Ironic, right? To escape the dirtiness of the city, the silent and great generations essentially poisoned younger boomers and older Gen Xers. Aside from showing off the short-term bad planning mindset of automotive sprawl, what did this cause? Well, lead in young children has been found to cause cognitive function problems and anger issues. So if you take that theory and mix in...
Oh God, it might explain our poor leadership we're currently experiencing. It's like senility and lead poisoning at a young age. Not a good combo for, you know, solid ideas to run a place.
All the new drugs flowing into the country, deindustrialization, and changes in social norms, suddenly you have a spike in crime throughout the country. Part of the reason why boomers and Gen Xers are generally afraid of cities and are also continuously spooked by the crime boogeyman on Fox News is because they grew up in some of the highest crime environments in the last 100 years. Led societal changes, the hippie mindset, new drugs, white flight, and deindustrialization really did a number on the boomers and Gen X brains. We often sit there and wonder how they could buy into the conservative groupthink that cities are active war zones, especially when many of us live in those cities. But you have to remember that this is the primal reaction of theirs to reflect on their experiences as young adults in a very unforgiving world. While we think many of them are stubborn and unwilling to change, we also have to imagine what's going on in their minds to even cause that thought process in the first place. Remember what we talked about in the beginning? I was on my Instagram the other day, and a friend of mine sent me a reel about a new housing development in downtown Red Bank, New Jersey. This new housing would be built next to a very busy train station in a very walkable area. So, of course, since this is a local...
I mean, that's smart. That's the one thing our people who designed the rail runner should have done is start like working on building developments and businesses centered around that. You know, maybe we could. I mean, the stuff's there, so we could do it at any time, I guess.
housing post, all of the comments were, of course, boomers and Gen X absolutely furious and befuddled as to why this is even needed. This was a perfect example for a look into the average mind of those who've been described throughout this video. They are so out of touch with reality because they grew up during a time of suburban growth and then used those newly built suburbs to exercise their escapism from the world. The facade of this escapism starts to shatter when the local world around them is finally forced to change. When we want to make progress in the present day in our own cities, we need to be able to discuss and talk to everyone who might be involved to teach and convince them why something is good. And part of that is getting into the heads of these people to see their perspective to address their thoughts. The boomers, even if we might find them stubborn and unwilling to compromise, can be persuaded. But often it's only when you appeal to their younger self do you actually truly unlock the ability to even get through to them. Boomers and older Gen X essentially grew up in an environment that was all about physical escapism. Nowadays, Gen Z escapes to online spaces so they don't have to think about their problems, but for boomers, it was always about physical escapism, getting as far away from their problems as they could. And that is the essential...
It's funny, I think all those places are kind of like shutting down now, these like big, like weird bar things. Margaritaville. I think there was like another one in Arizona, I forgot. It was like a Jimmy Buffett themed like place, but I forgot the name of it.
Ethos of this video. For many boomers, you will never be able to fix that line of thought. I mean, their favorite music is often something like Jimmy Buffett, where they're escaping to Margaritaville. But what you can do is try and talk backwards about their experiences and what they were like in the cities back when they were younger, and then go from there and reverse their thoughts about how things are different nowadays. Either way, good luck with that. And hopefully you enjoyed this video essay that's more of a throwback to what I used to do. Thank you for Henson for sponsoring this video. Thank you for watching. And these episodes take a while to write, but if you want to support me, I do have a Patreon, and thank you always to my...
Alright, well that was interesting, you know, just kind of lets you know where people are coming from, you know. And yeah, I think learning more and speaking to older generations is what we're gonna have to do just to be able to get new stuff built, you know. So it's just kind of learning where they're coming from, like how they grew up and what they expect from a place, you know, what they're used to. You kind of have to show people how things operate, you know. I think for me, like traveling to Europe with some of my family members, that, or even going to like a East Coast city, like going to like New York or even like DC or Boston, I guess. Maybe Boston not the best, but like I've never been to Chicago. Yes, I need to go there. But yeah, like New York or DC, that's kind of like more walkable, has public transportation, or even just showing people how to use the like bus network here in Albuquerque. Like a lot of people don't even use the current system we have now, so it's just like I think I took the bus with my mom one time, and she was like, "Oh, it's not that hard." So yeah, especially with the apps and stuff like that, you don't really have to wait the bus stop very much because you could just kind of see when the bus is coming and almost meet the bus in real time. So it's kind of nice. But sorry, I was kind of distracted. But we do need to reach across the generational divide and like learn where people are coming from so we can have these conversations. But I definitely think like doing stuff IRL with people, kind of, you know, parking and using local transit and like walking around a bit if you have some older folks in your life and you're trying to tell them about how we need to change our society for future problems, you know. But well, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I don't know if I brought many like great thoughts and points to this, you know, but just sharing some of the brain juice that I got flowing, you know. But yeah, I will try to get some more videos out this coming week, you know, at least 2 or 3. I got a bunch of ideas rolling around the head. Oops, sorry. I think the video kind of disappeared for a second. But yeah, tune in, subscribe, please like, share. Especially if you live in Albuquerque, I kind of want to get like conversation going. I want people to comment and, you know, message me on YouTube if you want me to like watch a video in regard to like helping to improve Albuquerque and New Mexico, you know. I'd really appreciate it.